speak Mr. M.B. Rajeev Gowda.
Thank you, Vice Chairman, sir. I rise in support of the IIIT Public-Private Partnership Bill 2017. As the ministers laid out, 15 such institutions across the length and breadth of the country are going to be made institutions of national importance as a result of the passage of this bill. So, the field of information technology has made India proud, and it has made India reach the cutting edge of technological development in fields related to computer science, and has allowed Indians to become champions and change the brand image of the country itself across the globe. Now, when we think about such a cutting-edge field and the field of education, it was important that we create more institutions, and we do it with resources that are not only harnessed from the government, but also get the best input and industry requirements, so that we could make these institutions really cutting edge in everything that they do. And that is why the public-private partnership model was initiated, and it has proven to be a tremendous success. Not only are these institutions good at teaching very, very relevant and applied and useful courses, they are also focused on research, and that is something that we must commend them for. So, when we want to make the public-private partnership model work better, it is important that we ensure that the private players also get a more significant role in the decision-making. As I can see, currently the governing body has exactly 2 members from the private partners, from the private sector, while the remaining 8 are drawn from the government. And the Senate, which is going to be the body that affects the curriculum, has absolutely no representation for members from the private sector. So given that, it may be important for the minister to consider how, in the rules or elsewhere, this partnership can actually be turned into something more tangible by enhancing the representation of the private sector in both the governing bodies as well as in the Senate. So, one of the good things about these institutions is they've come up with courses that are relevant to fields of national importance, such as agriculture and rural development. And if you actually look at clause 7.2 of this bill, it has a very interesting point. It says, every institute may take up the following works, namely, advising the state governments and union territory administrations included in its zone in matters of information technology and other technological issues referred by them to the institute for advice. So the basic theme there is that these institutes have to serve the state, have to serve the needs of the regions that they're part of. And so it's not only being at the cutting edge of technology, but being at the cutting edge of technology in the service of the states and the regions. And therefore, it's important that these institutions open their doors and build those bridges and partnerships that will enable them to be relevant to the locations where they are. So, when you think about relevance, not just to the global IT sector, but to the country itself, one of the areas I would urge the minister to communicate to these IIITs is the issue of cybersecurity. As we are moving towards a more digitally encompassing world, as all of us give out our Aadhaar data for everything under the sun, it is important that this data is guarded carefully and securely. And it is therefore important that these institutes create the courses to ensure that India has a cadre of cybersecurity professionals, that they create opportunities for ethical hacking, etc., which can then be harnessed by the government to ensure the best protection for our data. There have already been international attacks. They've attacked banking sectors elsewhere, and this is something that we cannot lose any time on in terms of moving ahead. So, other kinds of technologies that are really relevant to the country. We have been moving aggressively towards the mobile platform, and we are now very, very familiar with the concept of apps. So earlier we used to talk about software and things like that. Now we just talk about apps. But the basic point is apps are going to be on cell phones. So cell phones and smartphones are going to be in the hands of most of the public over time, and therefore that digital divide that used to come in the way of people, of the masses, taking the benefits of information technology, that divide is going to be bridged thanks to the smartphone, thanks to these mobile apps. But if you want this to really work, then it's important that these mobile apps are also developed in languages that are useful in those regions, which are understandable and intelligible to the users in those regions. So similarly, when it comes to fintech and all the developments that are taking place there, I would urge the minister to urge these institutes to focus on blockchain technology, all kinds of developments that are taking place in terms of Internet of Things, in terms of machine learning and artificial intelligence. All these are sectors that really can benefit from these institutes. So the institutes also must play a role in triggering the startup culture. We have programs at state levels, like the startup policy in my own state of Karnataka. We have a national policy. But unless these institutes, which are there physically in different parts of the country, and also not necessarily in the main cities of these states, unless they become the homes for these startups, until they integrate lawyers and intellectual property experts and others who can also help the local entrepreneurs, the startup community develop and strengthen, then they will be missing an opportunity. So I would urge them to put a lot of effort on that also. So another development, we keep talking, we hear about smart cities. There is a lot of work that needs to be done in the area of what is called civic technology. Harnessing technology for making our day-to-day life in urban areas much better. And that is something that I would urge the minister also to convey to these institutes when you meet the directors annually or otherwise, that these are priorities that will enable the government to do its job better and help the nation deal with the massive urbanization that we're facing. So the other thing that I had mentioned yesterday, that these cannot just be technology-oriented disciplines. They must have a humanities component, some courses that focus on the ethical, human, social dimensions of technology. Otherwise, we will become too narrow-minded. We will not understand what the impact of these technologies are on society, on people, etc., etc. So I would urge that these also be undertaken. Finally, sir, I want to end on a small personal note. Many years ago, at least 10, 12 years ago, I had gone to the chairman of Infosys, at that time, Mr. Narayan Murthy, and urged him to devote some resources for programs that would be essentially affirmative action voluntarily in the private sector. He took that idea to the IIIT that existed across the road in Electronic City in Bangalore, and they created a program to identify outstanding smart Dalit students and give them a one-year program which would make them even more, which invest in them in such a manner that they would become cutting edge. And I had the honor of being invited to the graduation of that first program, and I'm really happy to see that such institutions can come up with these kinds of innovations which have a huge impact on socially disadvantaged communities and can serve as models for other such programs across the length and breadth of the country and ensure that we develop technology and these institutions in an inclusive manner. Thank you very much, sir, and I commend this bill to the House.
Thank you.